September 8th, 1996. It's week 2 of a brand new NFL season, and we head to Pittsburgh for this AFC Central battle between the Baltimore Ravens and the Pittsburgh Steelers, with the defending AFC champions taking on the new franchise that moved over from Cleveland in what would be the first of many intense games between these two teams over the ensuing 3 decades. There were 57,241 fans in attendance, most of whom were hoping that the Steelers, after losing to the Jacksonville Jaguars the previous week, could win this one and avoid an 0-2 start, seeing as an 0-2 start to the season was almost a death sentence. Of the 6 teams in the AFC to make the playoffs in 1995, none of them started the year off with an 0-2 record. It's tough to say that any game in the second week of the season is a must-win, but considering prior history and the fact that a loss would make you 0-2 in the division, screwing you over for any tiebreakers before we officially hit the start of fall, this felt like a must-win. And the good news for the Steelers and the 57,241 fans in attendance was that, for the most part, everyone left happy and in good spirits, as you're able to tell from these highlights of the game. Because when the final whistle sounded, it was the Steelers who handed the Ravens their first ever loss in franchise history, taking it by a final score of 31-17. Pittsburgh scored a touchdown on each of their first 3 offensive drives of the game, and got the ball rolling from the very start of the contest, as on the second play of the game, Rod Woodson, the future Hall of Fame defensive back, and one of the greatest to ever do it, had a pick 6. Baltimore turned the ball over 3 times, including one turnover so inexplicably dumb that it will be an episode of dumb decisions in the near future because of how stupid Ravens head coach Ted Marchibroda was in allowing it to happen. The Steelers were extremely efficient on 3rd down, going 7 for 11 there, and because of this, they were able to have a ton of long drives, keeping the Ravens defense on the field for just about the entirety of the game, as the Steelers held onto the ball for over 35 out of a possible 60 minutes. Pittsburgh had a great ground game, with the Steelers picking up 206 yards rushing on roughly 5 yards per carry, despite having just one run longer than 15 yards. So it's not as if this number was inflated by any run in particular. This was just a consistent beatdown by the Steelers on the offensive line and in the trenches, with future Hall of Fame running back Jerome Bettis easily eclipsing the 100-yard mark. All in all, this was a good game by the Steelers to help get them back to 500 and get them on the right track for the upcoming season. However, that's not to say that every Steelers fan left Three Rivers Stadium happy on this day. By the time the game started, like I mentioned, there were 57,241 fans in attendance. At minimum, by the time the game ended, there were only 57,240 fans. Of course, some fans may have left to beat the traffic, or may have been ejected, or may have left for other reasons. But we know for a fact that there was one fan who started the game inside the stadium watching the Steelers play, and by the end of the game, was in jail. And the reason we know? Well, that's because attending this game we've been watching this whole time was one of the dumbest fans in the history of the NFL. Because in attendance on this day was a 35-year-old man by the name of Alan Adams, and his life was about to change forever at halftime of this contest. From the highest of highs to the lowest of lows in a matter of seconds. And when I say that this man is a certified moron, I truly mean it. Because this is the story behind Alan Adams and the man who might be, no exaggeration, the dumbest fan in NFL history. Make sure you hit that like button down below, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss a single video that we post on the channel. Because we post every single day on here about the weird and the wacky history of the NFL, with stories like this one they may not have heard of before. So if you like that sort of stuff, then this is definitely the place for you. Thanks in advance for liking and subscribing, and for helping us grow this community. And with that in mind, let's talk about the fan at Three Rivers Stadium with an IQ of 3. Before I talk about the actual incident in question, We need some context to understand what the original plan for the halftime show was for this game right here that you've been watching this entire time. One of the most popular on-field promotions that takes place at halftime of games or in between the action is having fans kick field goals through the uprights for some sort of prize. And during halftime, that's exactly what the Steelers were going to do, as they were going to have 3 fans come onto the field and try and split the uprights. The prize for successfully doing the job of Norm Johnson and successfully thinking that you have what it takes to play in the NFL was one of 2 options. Either you got a free dinner at an upscale restaurant, or you got a free round-trip flight on US Air, an airline company that, oddly enough, originated in Pittsburgh, though they were no longer headquartered in Pittsburgh by this point. I don't know what stipulations there were to the competition prizes in terms of where you were allowed to fly or what the restaurant was, but that seemed like a pretty decent prize, all things considered. It was a competition where you got to attempt 3 field goals. So I'm assuming that if you made 1, you got the restaurant. If you made 2, you got the flight. And if you got 3, you probably got an NFL contract, because by that point, that's awfully impressive. And a 35-year-old man by the name of Alan Adams was one of the 3 fans chosen to participate in this contest. He entered his name in the drawing, and sure enough, he got called down to the field, and at halftime was going to attempt his field goals. A chance at a really nice dinner with his wife, seeing as he was married, or a chance at a round-trip flight and a vacation somewhere, either to see the Steelers play on the road or to go somewhere with his wife, was on the line. And look, most of the time, the fans who kick these field goals absolutely stink and don't even come close. There's a reason why if a fan makes one of these field goals, they get on SportsCenter top plays, and they get recognition, and everyone's cheering them on. Most of the time, you're going to miss. We saw that firsthand when a Chicago brewery held a competition in January of 2019, when after Cody Parkey missed a 43-yard field goal in the infamous double doink wildcard game between the Chicago Bears and the Philadelphia Eagles, they invited fans to try that same kick. And of the 100 people to attempt the field goal, a grand total of 0 people made the kick. The brewery was going to give an all-expenses-paid trip to any NFL game during the 2019 season to anyone who made the kick. Obviously, they didn't have to worry about that based on how awful people were at kicking the field goals. So no one expected Adams, or any of the fans for that matter, to make any of his 3 field goals, which were from an undisclosed distance. And sure enough, Adams did not make a single field goal, as he went 0 for 3, meaning that he won nothing. Unfortunately, there is no footage of this, but I'm not surprised whatsoever, seeing as NBC was doing their halftime report. The field goal competition that teams sometimes hold at halftime is never shown live, and I don't know how or why anyone would be recording this in September of 1996. It's not like you could just whip out a smartphone. However, even though Adams didn't think he won anything, as it turns out, he did. Because in actuality, Adams won a trip to jail. He walked off the field after kicking the field goal and was promptly taken into custody and was being handcuffed out of the venue. Because, as it turns out, I kid you not, Alan Adams had a warrant out for his arrest. That's right, Alan Adams, with a warrant out for his arrest, genuinely thought it was a good idea to not only attend this game right here, but to enter himself in a competition in front of over 57,000 fans in the same exact county where he got arrested before, thinking that there wouldn't be anyone who noticed, and somehow thinking that not one police officer would be there, and somehow that not one person in law enforcement would be at the biggest event in the city in some capacity. You're probably wondering how a man starts a game at the stadium, is on the field at one point trying to kick field goals to win a prize, and ends up in jail and getting locked up. Well, here's how it went down. We've got to go all the way back to December of 1991, before Bill Cowher was even the head coach of the Steelers, and before Baltimore even had a team in the Canadian Football League, let alone the National Football League. Roughly 5 years prior, Adams was in an apartment complex in Pittsburgh, where he proceeded to commit a plethora of crimes. On one day in December of 1991, inside that complex, he shouted a ton of terroristic threats while very clearly intoxicated, and then punched one of the residents several times. In total, he had 4 charges, with 1 on simple assault, 1 on terroristic threats, 1 on disorderly conduct, and 1 on public drunkenness. He was taken to jail and released, but he had to go back to court on June 29, 1992, as a condition for his bail. Based on Pennsylvania law, he was probably going to face no more than 1 year in prison. As you might have guessed, Adams skipped bail and did not attend his court hearing. Why he skipped is unclear, but at that point, a warrant was out for his arrest. And not that I would ever advocate for anyone to skip court, but if you're a wanted man at this point, it's probably not the best idea to remain in the same county that you got arrested in. And it's definitely not the best idea to go to a freaking Steelers game where there are a ton of police officers around. However, if you are going to cheer on your team and wave a terrible towel around and wear the black and yellow, if you do something stupid like draw attention to yourself by entering a halftime competition on the field where the public address announcer calls your name, don't be surprised when you get caught. Because once Jack Kearney, an officer at the game, heard the name Alan Adams get called, he immediately raised his eyebrows and knew that Adams just played himself. After 4 years on the run, the county got their guy. As Kearney said, "The name caught my attention. I have a friend with the same name, and the name has been on the wanted list for so long that it kind of stands out." He continued, saying, "That's when it grabbed my attention that there was someone with the same name who had a warrant out for him." At that point, Kearney called up Sergeant Robert Noon and Deputy Douglas Clark, and the 3 of them gathered together and were waiting for him to come off the field, where he would promptly be arrested. Unsurprisingly, Adams was shocked about this. He didn't seem like the sharpest tool in the shed, considering everything that we know about him. Not just the part where he drunkenly made terroristic threats, but also the part where he skipped court and attended a Steelers game in the same county that he got arrested in and willingly drew the spotlight on himself. So it's not going to come as a surprise to you that Adams tried to convince the officers that it wasn't him that they were looking for, and that there was no warrant for his arrest, and that there was a different man with the same exact name. He pulled the Uno reverse card on him. There just happened to be another man named Alan Adams who had the exact same name and the exact same build and had the exact same age. You're looking for the wrong guy. You got my doppelganger. The police did not buy this, especially because another person who was at the game was John Young. John Young is the county bail office manager. You weren't going to pull a fast one by him. A valiant effort by Adams. Really thought he was going to get away with it. I really did. It could have been anyone, really. Let he who has never committed 4 charges, skip court, and publicly made himself the center of attention at the biggest event of the city that day for a free flight or a free meal cast the first stone. And not that the prize itself was worth throwing yourself behind bars, but the fact that he went 0 for 3 during the contest and was booed by the fans just makes this even better. How much hubris do you have to have, not just to think that you aren't wanted by this point, but to think that you can make field goals and do such a good job at it that you're willing to sacrifice your life as a free man for it for no good reason whatsoever. I found nothing that indicated that he was a kicker at any level of football before. I dug high and low, and there's nothing on Alan Adams kicking at all in high school or college. That could have been the first time he kicked a football for all we know. Unfortunately, this is where the story dies, as I found absolutely nothing about what happened afterwards. There's no information on how long he got sentenced, or even if he is still alive today. I honestly couldn't tell you, as there's no identifying information in any newspapers after the game. And the last name is common enough where it's not an easily searchable name. I did a video a while ago about a fan who did something really stupid at a Steelers-Bengals game and pulled out a gun during the game, and I was able to find him because his information was pretty easy. You can learn more about him by clicking the card in the upper right corner, but I couldn't find anything about this guy. However, I'm going to assume that he was not released from jail this time, seeing as he was very clearly a flight risk, and seeing as he was not able to post bond, and that he went away for a long time. I wish I knew more instead of just having to make assumptions, but considering everything we know, I think that's a pretty fair assumption. Safe to say, he was not able to see his Steelers win the game he'd been watching this entire time, and he has made himself the dumbest fan in Steelers history. I thought the fan that drove through the concourses of Three Rivers Stadium in the 1980s was the winner, and you can learn more about him by clicking the card in the upper right corner. But this guy, Alan Adams, might have taken the crown. So what did we learn from all of this? If you have an active warrant out for your arrest, and you want to attend a football game in the same county that you got arrested in, where there are going to be lots of cops around and people in law enforcement around, don't draw attention to the fact that you're there. Don't put yourself in a halftime show that puts you on the field where everyone knows your name, especially when you don't have the skill to pull it off and you're that delusional to think that not only you can make a field goal, but that winning a flight or a nice dinner is worth the risk of literally ending up behind bars. And if you do get arrested, using the argument that it wasn't me because it was someone with the same name as me is probably not going to work. Not when you've been on the wanted list for that long. There have been a lot of dumb fans to root for the Steelers, but this one truly might be the dumbest. At the very least, Alan Adams won't forget the fact that the Steelers won this game anytime soon. Because when all these elements are in play, you can't exactly be surprised when this backfires. Talk about a dumb decision. Check out our live streaming schedule for the next few days. We're live every single day on this channel, whether we're covering a sporting event or playing GeoGuessr or just taking your requests. So make sure you like and subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss a single time that we go live and so that you can join this community. Also, thanks to all our members and our Patreon supporters who get exclusive perks like their name at the end of each video, members-only Q&A streams, and cool emojis to use on videos and during streams. See how you can join this community and become a member or a Patreon member by clicking the link in the description below.